Should Rasmus Hojlund start the Europa League final for Manchester United against Tottenham, given the awful season he has had by a Manchester United striker's standards? Now, it's a difficult question because United don't actually have any other central striking options they can use in this game, but it's quite clearly a position that they will and need to address over the course of the summer. They've been linked with Victor Gyökeres over the last few days. £55 million Sporting will potentially let him go for. For me, that's a no-brainer, but I actually think that United will have to win the Europa League in order to even get in that conversation about signing him. They're stuck with Hojlund for this game, and there has been a conversation since the Chelsea defeat on Friday night, and probably way longer than that, of just drop him. Play Bruno in the false nine, or play Mason Mount through the middle, play Garnacho through the middle. What will Ruben Amorim do? What should he do? I think it's a completely valid question given how United's attacks are breaking down with Hojlund up front. Seems at the moment that he's more focused on fighting with the central defensive opponent that he has, rather than trying to win the ball and bring other players into play. He can do it, but invariably he doesn't end up doing it. And United, they're so toothless. They're not scoring enough goals at the moment. And it's just a position that needs to be urgently addressed. But like you say, this is all that they've got to do. If United go into the Europa League final not playing Rasmus Hojlund, they will be playing a makeshift centre-forward, a player who is not centre-forward. Kobbie Mainoo has played in the centre-forward role over the past few months at times because of United's problems in this area. Joshua Zirkzee is injured and will not be taking part in this game, barring a miracle. So what will Ruben Amorim do, and should Ruben Amorim drop him? Now, there's a strong case to say that he should, but I don't think he will drop him, and I don't think he should drop him for this game, because I think that the questions are, like, what do you do? How do you get around this problem? Erik ten Hag did it in last season's FA Cup final, but Ruben Amorim hasn't really shown any. He's been building him up. There was a quote that he said after the Chelsea game about being happy with what Hojlund was doing. He says he loses a lot of duels, but he wins some duels. And look, ultimately, everybody can see that this is a problem, and Ruben Amorim can probably see that this is a problem as well. But he cannot come out and slate his centre-forward right before the biggest game of his life, because this is the biggest game of Rasmus Hojlund's life. You don't want to pile pressure and pile expectation on them any more so than they already have. It's super important that Ruben Amorim sticks by the players that he's got. Just for this temporary period, they need to show some cutthroatness. They need to show some relentlessness. They need to show some all of the vigor and the awful kind of ruthlessness that they've shown with the staff, letting bundles of staff, hundreds and hundreds of staff go over the past year or so. United need to do that with the first team squad that have been underperforming for so long. And Rasmus Hojlund's place in this squad is far from certain. If anything, it looks more likely that he will leave the club in the summer at the moment rather than stay. But that's a conversation for later this week. That's a conversation for another day. What does he do in this case? I think for me, maybe in the unpopular crowd here, but I think he will start him, and I would start him too. I think it's super important, really, to have an established centre forward in this position to try. We got to remember, Rasmus Hojlund's scoring record in European football is a lot better than it is in domestic football. But the problem is they are facing a domestic opponent in Tottenham. Stronger centre-backs, quicker centre-backs. Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven are probably the two players that Hojlund will be facing up against this Tottenham player back four. And will he win duels with them? Will he be able to run the channels? Will he be able to hold the ball up? In fact, I watched Jean-Philippe Mateta in the FA Cup final at the weekend, plucking balls out of the air, holding Josko Gvardiol off him, bringing other players into the game. That leads to Crystal Palace's only goal in the game. The ball is lofted high to Mateta. He brings it down, plays in. The ball goes to Munoz on the side, on the right side. He squares it across, and Eze scores a goal, which ends up winning Crystal Palace the FA Cup. And that was something that Mateta did throughout that game and throughout the season for Crystal Palace. And that's why United have been looking at a player like that in order to come in and potentially fix their attack or help the build-up anyway. Hojlund hasn't really shown that he's capable of doing that. But I think the alternatives for me are too untried by this point. there'd be certainly, if Joshua Zirkzee was fit, I think certainly there'd be a conversation about whether to start him there. And I probably would say start Joshua Zirkzee in Hojlund's place if he was fit, but he's simply not. The main thing here is if I was, with the options that are available, if I was to drop Hojlund and put somebody else in the place, I would probably think that Bruno Fernandes would be the right player to put in that position. But the problem that you have with that is Bruno Fernandes is Manchester United's most creative player. And for me, I do not think you take the risk in a game like this of playing your most creative player in any position further than midfield, whether you play him in the 10 or whether you play him in the 8. And I'll get to that in a second. I think Bruno Fernandes needs to be involved in the build-up in order for United to be able to create chances. It's just super important for me that Bruno is actually involved in the game and not chasing down lost causes or trying to hold up the ball against like defenders who are bigger and stronger than him and quicker than him. That's not where you utilize Bruno Fernandes for me. And if you were to do it with a midfielder, I would maybe look at Mason Mount or potentially Garnacho to start through the middle. But I just think you know how this is going to go, right? You know that if Ruben Amorim did that, and it didn't work, and United lost the game, he started Garnacho or Mason Mount or somebody in place of Rasmus Hojlund, and United lost the game, you know the absolute pile of pressure that would go on Ruben Amorim for making the wrong tactical decision, for not starting a central striker in Manchester United's biggest game in years, in their biggest game of this season, the game that hinges 120, 150 million quid's worth of cash on it if you win it or if you lose it. I think it's too big a risk to take. It's something I don't think Ruben Amorim will do. And there's no guarantee anyway that Mason Mount or Alejandro Garnacho or another option that you have through there is going to offer you the link-up play or the finishing instincts in the centre forward role that you're going to need to win this game. So I think, for me, I think you start Hojlund, you see how it goes. If he doesn't deliver, you always have the option to bring him off. You have the option to bring on Kobbie Mainoo or switch one of those players I've just talked about into that position. But invariably for me, I think Hojlund has to be stuck by for this game. And the question is about his future and whether he ends up staying. You have to deal with that after this game happens. But you go into this, Ruben Amorim needs a big centre forward, a big, strong centre forward in order to get the best out of his team. It's not working at the moment, but I don't think it's a decision he can afford to make. If he does make it and he wins, he'll be hailed as a tactical genius or something like that. And look, I'll fall on my sword and say he got the decision right. But I just think it's too big a risk for me. But let me know what you think. Should Rasmus Hojlund start this game? Should he start the Europa League final? Let me know on social media at @double_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. And let me know in the comment section on this podcast or on this video as well.